That's some intrigue, boys. Because I talk about the 5 teams that are contenders. And I don't really think Edmonton's a contender to win it all. And I think you'd agree, Marshall. I'm not sure.
Yes.
However, you're talking about a head coach there that if the players like him, which everybody that knows Jason Maas does like him, if they don't do something in the playoffs, he's gone. Period. Because it's a talented team that can't win the big games. But maybe now's the time. They're going into the playoffs at 8-10. They've got every reason to rest, as Dave just said. They're top guys. The Riders don't, because they got to play for first place. So if it's over by halftime here on Saturday, then you'll see Cody Fajardo get sat down, and you'll see Isaac Harker come into the game, and God knows who else. But if I'm an Edmonton fan, that gives you a real reason to get behind this team going into the playoffs. Not for the sake of win one for Jason Maas, but it's something to watch. Let's put it that way. It's an interesting story for them going into the playoffs.
Yeah, it is. And again, anything's possible in the playoffs. There's a possibility for them to go in and beat Montreal. There's a roadblock in Hamilton. I just can't see anybody getting past them. But chances are for them to go into Montreal and win, it's going to be tough. But hey,
I'm starting to think they could do it.
Well, that's why they play the games. And you mentioned that before the interview, all what they have. I mean, they've got. And remember at the start of the season, when everything was just starting out, and you took a look, and wow, Edmonton's not a bad team. And they're not. Yeah, they have a quarterback. They've got a run game. Those receivers are excellent. That defensive front, I mean, it's, it went south, but, and who knows. And I worked with Jason Maas in Hamilton, and I love the guy.
Yeah, everybody loves him.
He's a professional. He worked through an injury, and he just worked his ass off. He was a smart guy. He knew the offense. He knows football. The one thing I wish, Jason, just cool it. Just calm down a bit, because, when you see that on the sidelines, you don't like it. You don't like seeing that. And I don't know what his players think about that. But, he's a good football man.
Well, I think back to a story. I remember some friends of ours when we lived in BC, this guy stood in front of his 5 children, and he had a cigarette in his hand at the time, and he says, "Kids, don't ever smoke." And I think it's obvious the point I'm trying to get at. But back to your question about Jason Maas, you wish you'd calm down. Yeah, I wish he would too. But that was one of the things that I lost a lot of respect for Jason Maas when I saw, and he's been more under control this year. But for the last couple of years, I saw him on the sidelines melting down in front of the cameras and throwing off headsets and yelling at players and different things like that. And your players, just like those 5 kids that watch their dad say that, are watching. What you say is important. What you do is more important, because your kids are watching you all the time. And your players are like your kids to their head coach. They're watching you all the time. They want to see how you react when things go well, how you react when things don't go well. They want to see how you handle things in the media, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they, in a lot of ways, they won't admit it, but they will emulate you. They will act. If you act out, they will act out. If you act maturely, they will act maturely. Look at the teams that Trestman coached, how professional those teams were. Why were they that way? It's because Trestman was.
Mike Riley, same thing. I mean, he was just like that.
I'm sorry, Winnipeg's Mike Riley?
Winnipeg's Mike Riley. Sorry. Yeah.
No, it's fine. Yeah. Just had to clarify for the younger viewers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, lead by example, and make sure it's a good example, and your team will follow you.
Yeah, well...
And the name of the game isn't, you said, well, the players like Jason Maas. Okay, so what? The job description isn't be liked.
I don't know if they like him or not. I'm saying I know Jason Maas and I like him. If you know Jason Maas, you like him.
My point is, your job description isn't to be liked, it's to win games.
Yeah, but the point is, if you really like your coach, you might want to ball out in the playoffs, or else he's going to be fired. That's the point that I'm making about Jason Maas, because it is... It's a results-based business, but I got a buddy, he's probably watching right now. He's an oil man. His name's Mike. I won't name his last name. He goes, do you want to tell those guys that every business is results-based? Which is funny, by the way. I always get a kick out of that. But again, if you want Jason Maas to keep being your coach, Eskimos, go out and win for him. Otherwise, he's going to be gone. Because he could still be fiery and kick Gatorade coolers and throw headsets. If they were winning, you can pretty much do whatever you want when you're winning.
Yep.
Right? And just to flip that for a second with Craig Dickinson, yeah, they take on the teams coach's personality. And that's what the Riders have done. We've talked about it a lot on this show this year, but I can talk about it more. They play relaxed. They play like they care for each other because guess what? Craig Dickinson's relaxed and he cares about his players.
You know, I'll go back to 2000. Greg Maas was the head coach. And Greg Maas was a guy that was, hey, you know, tuck your shirt and do all these things.
Greg Wonderful Maas.
Yeah, absolutely. A great guy, and I love him. But, you know, the players were tight around him. Well, guess what? He went to the XFL that year. Barato came in. Barato was like a breath of fresh air to those guys, and we won the Grey Cup. So it was just a different approach, and those guys played.
So hang on a second. Maas got canned in BC, didn't he?
No, he didn't. He went down to the XFL. He got an opportunity.
Okay.
And I have no idea how that happened because I was a coach then, so I have no idea about how it happened. But he went down to the XFL, and then Barato took over, and we went on, and we were 8-10 to that year. And then we went to Edmonton and beat them, Calgary, and we beat them, and Dickinson. And then we went to the Grey Cup and beat Montreal. So we ended up 11-10, but 8-10 for the year. And that year, we were the best team in the league and the worst team. I mean, it was a real weird year. But Barato came in and loosened things up, and the guys played.
Mm-hmm. Here's a bit of a visual, and it sort of feeds off of your comment about Brancato. A good head coach,
Steve Barato,
or doesn't you? I thought you said Brancato.
No, it was Steve Barato.
Steve Barato. Yeah. But my point is, a good head coach doesn't use the same tool every year. They look in their toolbox, they look at their team, and they say, which buttons do I need to press this year? Whose buttons do I need to press? Who do I need to be softer on? Who do I need to be harder on? And they're using different tools with different players at different times of the season, and in particular on different teams with different seasons. It's not using the same hammer. Like if the old expression, if you own a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Well, if you own more than a hammer, you've got different tools to use with different players at different times.
Well, and when do we have AJ coming on? 5 more minutes. Okay. I just want to tell one story about Greg Maas. I guess he was. It's amazing he was only around. Well, for me, 1 year, like 99 was my first year with the Riders. It seemed like he was around a lot longer, but he was that kind of big personality.
Oh, big time.
Right? And I think that's something that the CFL needs to embrace is, I think, guys like that. And I'm not saying Jason Maas is a Greg Maas type, but Marshall, like when Maas held a news conference, and Smitty, you were around, you saw it. It would be, come on in, I'm going to tell stories. And it was like literally, the media used to joke, Maas is going to tell us about how great he is, which he probably would, but he was funny. And I remember, and he's not with us anymore, right?
No, he passed away.
Passed from a cancer battle. So this is not speaking ill of the dead, but he had a bald spot on the back of his head, which, by the way, so do I. But either he told me or one of your staff told me that, that spray-on hair you could buy, he would put it on, but only for TV games. If the game was on TV, because back then not every game was, he'd spray that bald spot on the back of his head so it didn't go on national television.
Yeah.
Just the kind of guy that he was.
He was phenomenal. I could tell stories, but I don't want to.
But a character. An absolute character.
Big time.
Yeah, and the CFL wants to just, like a turd in the sandbox, cover up that era. It's past, like in the 90s, American expansion and the Gleibermans and all that stuff. I mean, I used to fight with the league all about, man, we got to celebrate this stuff. We got to talk about it. And they're like, and then I go back and read Ed Willis's book on it. It's not like I wasn't around at the time, but I forgot how bad it was. Mm-hmm. It was bad. I'm like, now I know why they want to hide this. I get it.
Monzi was a hell of a personnel guy. If you looked at his reports, they were incredible, very detailed.
Knew his stuff.
Oh, yeah. He was unreal.
Yeah. Yep. So, but there's not, who's a character in the CFL? Chris Jones even would have been the last one.
Yeah.
Is there one right now?
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
You're watching Rod Pedersen on demand. For more of the Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.